All right. I want to invite you once more to turn to Psalm chapter 20 if you're not already there. We're going to look at this as our sermon this morning, our text being Psalm chapter 20. All right. Okay. I'm going to ease into this like easing into a warm bathtub. And maybe as I talk, the mic will get worked out. I want to ask you, before we look at our text this morning in Psalm chapter 20, to fill in the blank. To fill in the blank for me. And here's the question, and you fill in the blank. What would it look like to be a successful, and there's the blank. What would it look like to be a successful, Christian? That's a good one, Bill. Now, depending on where you are in life and what God has put in your hands, you may be putting in that blanket something different. Maybe you say, what would it be like, what would it look like to be successful as a husband, or as a father, as a grandparent, as a worker, and so on. And it's kind of a question whether we ask out loud or not. It is a question that we're trying to answer with our lives. We're trying to be a good whatever it is. And the reason that we ask these questions is because really we are in a battle each day. We're in a battle to live for the Lord. And so success would be to live for Him. And that has implications for whether you're a grandmother, whether you're a husband, whether you're a father, whether you're a worker, whether you're a teacher, a mom, whatever your situation in life may be. You're asking the question, what does it mean to be successful in God's eyes? Now, the world has a view of what success in all these areas are. So I don't want to just give you a blank check this morning and say, we're going to talk about being successful. Because you might pour in your own meaning from that, or I might pour in my own meaning from that. But true success is success in the eyes of God. And our psalm here, Psalm chapter 20, is a unique one. It's not one that's covered a lot by people. There's a lot of well-known psalms, maybe like Psalm 23, that's comfort in the time of walking in the shadow of the valley of death. Or there's some of the psalms are well-known for being praises to God, and we know them through the music that they've been put to. The words have been put to music. But this particular one is a Psalm of David, and it's about a king before he goes into battle. Now, at this point, your eyes may be glazing over, and you say, do we learn about a king going into battle? What does this have to do? Is it just a history lesson? Well, I'm glad you're thinking through that. Because I want to point out that the Bible calls you and me as Christians. In the book of Peter, 1 Peter, chapter 2, it says that we, through Christ, we are a royal priesthood. Some translations have kingly priests. That this prayer for the king going into battle, and that God would bless him, and that God would prosper him, and that the Lord's will would be done, can also apply to our lives. Now, we might not be fighting a physical battle, but we're told in other places that our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's against powers and principalities. It's against these evil forces of the devil. It's against our own flesh. It's against the world. It's against the devil. And so in a very real sense, we, whether you realize it or not, us as Christians are in a battle. And these prayers for the king, the prayers for success in battle, prayers for what we trust in, apply to you as well. So I want to give that as the background to this, And just as we read through this, you be thinking of ways that you can pray, using this as a model to say, God, would you help me to be a successful father, successful husband, successful wife? Because that's difficult. And let me give you a couple of quick examples, rather than leaving it general like that. The Bible commands husbands to love their wives as Christ loves the church. But what does the husband say? Well, you don't know my wife, right? Or what? Maybe that command is for, if she's deserving of that love, or if she's lovely, or if she's... That's not what the verse says at all. It says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Now, Christ loving the church, that is a high call. He laid down His life for you and me. And we're unlovely people many times. And we were not worthy of it. And was it because we were obedient or submissive to Christ that He did that? Actually, we weren't. So us as husbands, we can't use all these excuses. God says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and laid down His life for them. And in doing that kind of love, we're going to show the world a picture of the gospel, of how Jesus loves them. We're going to show them about grace, and we're going to show them about mercy. Now, that's one example of a battle that husbands face. And if we had to ask ourselves the question, what would it take, what would it look like to be a successful husband? Well, the world's view is just too shallow. They basically say, if you're home on time and if you put food on the table, But God calls us to love. That's a challenge. And we need prayer in that. And God actually wants us to be the husbands He calls us to be. And so it's right to pray, God, would you give me success in this? Would you grant the desires of my heart in this area? Would you prosper me in this? Would you protect me as I'm a husband? All right, the same. Let's go over to wives. Wives, do you submit to your husband as to the Lord? In other words, are people seeing in the way you treat your husband your submission to God? That's a high calling. You have your own list, right? You don't know my husband, right? My wife could say that about me. But it's as to the Lord. It's a trust in the Lord. And again, if you had to ask the question, what would it look like to be a successful wife? Well, the world will tell you a few things, right? They've got their own list. But God calls us to something so deep that when people see your marriage, it's a picture of His love. Now, all of us, this is a big, I don't even know why I'm opening a can of worms like this in the intro, because submission is a hot topic. But let me just throw this out there. Everyone is submitted to somebody, whether you feel like it or not. If you don't believe that, just stop showing up at work and see how long you have a job. You're submitted to a boss. Okay? If you speed and the cop pulls you over, you're getting a ticket. I mean, we don't like to be reminded of these things, but everyone is under authority. And Jesus Christ, although He is God and equal with God, in Philippians 2 says, He did not consider equality to be grasped, but He humbled Himself, taking on the form of a servant. That Jesus Christ Himself, although He's God from all eternity, submitted Himself to the will of the Father. He prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, not my will, but thine be done. Now, I wanted to give you this background information so we understand the psalm. It is a psalm about a king, probably about David, probably about to go into war. And the people are praying for him, that God would save the king, that God would prosper him. But listen, we need prayer, we have battles, we're striving to live the Christian life. And this applies to us as well. So it's prayers for us, In the second half, the part we read for our scripture reading is about us trusting in the Lord. Let's look at this again a little closer. Psalm 20. I'm going to read the first 5 verses. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. May He send you help from the sanctuary and give you support from Zion. May He remember all your offerings and regard with favor your burnt sacrifices. May He grant you your heart's desire and fulfill all your plans. May we shout for joy over your salvation, and in the name of our God set up our banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. Now let's look again at verse 1. These are ways to pray, not only for yourself, but for others, that they would be successful in the way that God would have them be successful. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. Now, obviously, this is a prayer of protection, the day of trouble, and protect you. But there's another thing that jumps out to me that gives me hope. It says, may the God of Jacob. Now, if you remember in the book of Genesis, there's a wily character named Jacob. His name literally means he pulls a leg or grasps the heel. A modern-day translation would be he's a cheater. And that was true of Jacob. He was the second born, but he cheated his twin brother Esau out of the birthright. He was ambitious. He was a liar. Some translations say that while Esau was an outdoorsman, a hunter, that Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. And I've looked into that, and it seems the language was that he was a thinker. And most likely they're talking about him scheming. And do you remember when Esau comes in from the field and he's starving? He didn't get any game that day. He didn't get anything while he's hunting. Jacob just happened to have a bowl of stew ready. And Esau says, I'm starving. And Jacob says, I got some soup here, but sell me your birthright. It's almost like he had the contract made out. This was Jacob. Now God met him, and because of God's promise to Abraham, to Isaac, his fathers, and now He made a covenant with Jacob, God changed his name to Israel. And Israel, the one who wrestled with God, had 12 sons. These became the patriarchs, or the fathers of all the tribes, the children of Israel. Almost always after that, Jacob is referred to as Israel because of this encounter with God. And it harkens back to the promise of God to Israel and his descendants. But in Psalm 20, may the God of Jacob protect you. That gives me hope, because it's like God took care of a cheat and a scoundrel. God changed Jacob's life. God gave him grace and promises and blessings, though he did not deserve it. And I identify a lot more with that. It's like in the New Testament, you can identify with Peter, because he's always saying the wrong thing or jumping out there or messing up. In the Old Testament, to identify with Jacob and to say, wow, though my life may be one that is not being always honest, always straightforward, there's hope for me. And so this is a prayer of protection. The God of Jacob protects you. And this is a great way to pray for yourself. Whatever situation, God, protect me. God, you are the covenantal God. Protect me. Or to pray for someone else. Lord, be with so-and-so. Protect them for your name's sake. Verse 2. May He send you help from the sanctuary and give you support from Zion. We know intuitively, and I'm going to move pretty fast here, that people not only need protection in prayer, they need provision. They need strength. There's something they're going through. They need God's power in. And so that's asking for help and support. Verse 3, may He remember all your offerings and regard with your favor your burnt sacrifices. Now, The people who heard this in David's day would understand that the sacrifices, you would take an animal to the temple, and the burnt sacrifices, there were different types of sacrifices. Some were grain, some were for Thanksgiving, some were for a fellowship offering. You'd sit down and eat a meal in the courtyard, and it'd show like a restored relationship with God. But the burnt sacrifices here that are mentioned, there's a whole burnt offering. They would take something like a goat and they would sacrifice it, and they'd burn the whole thing up, just completely. It was one of the most common offerings, and what that offering was saying is that, God, I give my whole life to you. Everything. So this burnt offering, this type of offering would be completely consumed. Now, thank goodness we're New Testament people, and Christ is the final sacrifice. We don't have to bring a lamb or a goat to a designated place and burn them up. It seems pretty brutal, but thank goodness we don't have to do that. But the principle of saying, God, my whole life is yours. I lay down my life as a sacrifice. It's something that's throughout the whole Bible. In Romans chapter 12, Paul says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. In our prayers, both for ourselves and for others, it's important to remember, who is God? God, whatever may be, I lay down my life for you. God, I pray so-and-so would be successful in the way that you want them to be, that they had lived their life for you, Lord. That's what jumps out at me from verse 3. Let's look at verse 4. Now this one sounds pretty good. Verse 4 of Psalm 20. May He grant your heart's desire and fulfill all your plans. Well, that's great. I mean, do you mean I can go and say, God, grant my desires? I've got some plans here. Will you stamp them and bless them? I think we all like verses like that in the Bible. And you say, would God want my plans to succeed? The answer is depends. If they're His plans as well, absolutely. That's why Jesus was able to say something audacious like, if you ask something according to God's will, He will grant it. Really? If I pray and ask God that His will will be done, He's going to grant it? Yes. Yes, He will. Because that's God's plan, and His plan is always good. So I think we forget that sometimes. And if we have plans like that, we say, would God want me to be a good husband? Well, yeah, of course. Would God want me to be a godly worker? Would God want me to be a godly mother? Would God want me to be all these things? Yes, He does. And so praying for those things is absolutely appropriate and absolutely what He would like to grant to fulfill all your plans. Now, also in the Psalms, the famous Psalm, Psalm 37. I think it adds a little bit more to this verse to give us perspective. Psalm 37, a few pages over in your Bible, verses 4 through 6. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. So, according to Psalm 37, the order of things is to delight ourselves in the Lord, and He will give us the desires of our heart. Now, if we think, I've got some desires, I'm going to take those to God, He better fulfill them or else I'm mad at Him. That's kind of like our plan. First, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And you know what I think? I think many times we don't really know what the desires of our heart are. We think we do. We think something will make us happy. We go after it and we find out, that wasn't it. So God is graciously telling us, delight in me, and I know you. I know you. I know the plans I have for you. I created you. I know your desires. Delight in me. I'll give you the desires of your heart. Delight in my plans. And you know what? I'll fulfill them. Your plans will become my plans. And God would love to bless that as well. Well, verse 5, back in Psalm 20. Again, these are different petitions for the king. These are different ways to pray. As you pray for yourself and for others, for success in these different areas. Verse 5 says, may we shout for joy over your salvation, and in the name of our God set up our banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. Now, I've got to explain that in the Bible, the word salvation is a very full word. It has the idea of a rescue. And there's times in the Old Testament when they talk about salvation, and they mean, victory in battle or rescue from enemies. That's probably the meaning here, since it's a king going into battle. Most of the times when we talk about salvation, we mean the ultimate rescue, that God would rescue us through Jesus Christ, faith in Him, from His wrath, from the final judgment. And that's the ultimate salvation. But I want to say that here in verse 5, even though it talks of this salvation, may we shout for joy over your salvation, this is something we still need. And sometimes we say, I want victory in my life over some area. And basically what you're saying is there's something going on in your life that's very difficult. It could be a trial from without. It could be a trial from within, your own battle with the flesh. Or it could be actually enemies you have. It could be a circumstance. Maybe it is the finances have dried up. Maybe it's the family relationship that's broken. And so when you pray and you're asking God for a rescue in that area, that's still important. The picture here is of a military victory or a battle. It says, in the name of our God, set up our banners. After a battle, they set up these banners saying, hey, we beat these people. We see an example of that when Moses and the Israelites whipped the Ammonites. They set them up, a banner, and showed victory. So the point here that I take away from verse 5 is that we can pray that God would help us. And those areas of need that are not our greatest need, the salvation of our soul, but the salvation of victory in an area. God, please, help me in this area. I'm struggling. Lord, please, help my family member who's struggling with this, perhaps addiction. Lord, give this person victory in this area. Because many times, that is the stronghold that's keeping them from God. I want to say as an aside, though, obviously the greatest deliverance that you and I need is the salvation of our souls. If we were to gain the whole world and yet lose our soul, Jesus says, it profits us nothing. I mean, imagine the fullest life you live on this earth, with everything you could possibly imagine. Wealth, popularity, good looks, health, strength, long life, possessions, and yet to die like the man in Jesus' parable in Luke 16, to die like the rich man, and to find yourself in a place of torment while others, like Lazarus the beggar, are being comforted in the bosom of God. It would be to lose everything. It would be almost the worst eternity, because you would say, I had it all and I lost it all. And what was most important, I did not see until it was too late. If you're here this morning and you need God to rescue you, to save you on the day of judgment, don't wait. Put your faith in Jesus Christ. Jesus loves you. That's why He came to earth to die in your place. And He welcomes with open arms anyone here today that would admit they're a sinner and that they need Jesus to save you. You put your trust in what He has done, and He will make you right with God. So, verses 1 through 5, these are all different ways to pray. Alright? We've prayed. We've asked for God's will to be done. We've asked for victory. We've asked for success in His name, that His plans would be done. And now, what's amazing about this is it comes to just absolute trust in God. We've prayed, now trust Him. Many scholars believe that maybe this is the king speaking in verses 6 through 8. And remember, this is before a battle. It's even possibly David, since this says it's a Psalm of David. And before the battle has even started, the king expresses confidence in God. That God's got it. We even saw this in David's life when he was fighting the giant, Goliath. Remember, before he swings the sling and hits the Philistine in the head, there's this banter back and forth between Goliath and David. And Goliath is just kind of joking, like, what am I, a dog? You're coming at me with sticks? And David basically says, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to cut off your head. The body is going to be fed to the vultures to show that God is the God of Israel. But you talk about confidence. It's not just trash talking that David thought, well, I'm better than Goliath. He showed all along that his trust was in God. Even before that, when he talked with Saul, not Samuel. Saul the king. Saul tried to talk him out of it. He said, David, you can't go against this guy. He's been a warrior from his youth, and you're just a youth. And David said, listen, Saul, I'm a shepherd for my father. I've had lions, I've had bears come out, and I grabbed them by the mane. God delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear, and He'll deliver me from this giant. There's an absolute trust in God. So let's read these verses again, verses 6 through 8. Remember, it's before the battle. Now I know that the Lord saves His anointed. He will answer from His holy heaven with the saving might of His right hand. Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name